Earlier, I was thinking about previous consoles that I bought over the years, many, many years. And was there a specific reason why I bought any certain console? Was it a game? What was the reason, right? And the one that I kept thinking of was the PlayStation 1 because there's so many consoles I bought day one, plenty that I didn't, but the PS1, Sony was new to the market as far as video game consoles went. Like we all knew the brand, we had Sony Walkmans, stuff like that, right? But I was a little uncertain with Sony. And I had a Nintendo 64. When the Sega Saturn came out, I never owned a Sega console prior to that, but I had a Sega Saturn, only a handful of games, but I did enjoy it. But the PS1 like wasn't really on my radar too much. Like I didn't really pay close attention to it. But over time, having like a Nintendo 64 and being like, okay, where's the Squaresoft games at? Where's our new Final Fantasy at? And it didn't happen. And when Final Fantasy VII got announced, they were playing trailers in the movie theater, commercials on TV. It was in every magazine. It was like, holy crap, I have to have a PlayStation 1. So the PS1 I bought because of Final Fantasy VII. I didn't buy the PS1 until Final Fantasy VII came out, and I posted that. Like, who bought a PS1 because of Final Fantasy VII? So I remember at the time, so many people who were not into like role-playing games. Like I had my circle of friends. Some of them were into some of the Squaresoft games in the Super Nintendo, but not everybody. But when the PS1 had Final Fantasy VII, a lot more people were talking about these types of games. It kind of blew up at that time. And, so it was an amazing experience. PS1, bought it for Final Fantasy VII. And I said, I remembered I was annoyed that there's no Final Fantasy game that came to the Nintendo 64. And that, like, at the time, I didn't have money. And I actually, like, I'll kind of talk about this a little bit, but I won money from a radio contest, Kiss FM out there in Los Angeles. You got to remember, this is back in like 97. It was a long ass time ago, man. That money's long gone. But we won tickets. Like my younger brother, he won tickets to this water park. I think it was the water park that was at like Magic Mountain or something. And it was like exclusive, like, hey, they're going to have this whole thing for this radio station. People get these tickets, you go, and there's going to be all these other contests. So my brother won these tickets. We all went to this water park, and then they had where I think it was sponsored by Coca-Cola or something like that. And you went in and they had like, okay, this Kiss FM contest. We'll give you a free bottle of Coca-Cola, or like they had different drinks. Give you a free bottle if you fill out this little sweepstakes like thing, right? Just put your name, your phone number, whatever, your address. So I did that. I filled it out. Like, give me a damn ice cold drink, like 120 degrees out. And then when we were leaving, they pulled the name, and I actually won. It was $10,000, man. I wish I'd win $10,000 right now. Holy crap. Like, who wouldn't need $10,000 in this world right now? After taxes and all that stuff, it was like, I think like 6,000 or something. Bunch of it, was used for stuff for family, paying bills and all that. And then I had a little bit left over, and it was like, hey, I want to spend this money and get me a PS1 and Final Fantasy VII. And after that, like, I ignored everything that came out prior to that. But I remember I went to KB Toys. I posted that down here. Like, I bought it at KB Toys in the mall. It was actually the Montclair Plaza in Southern California. That mall used to be awesome. Now it kind of sucks, but they had an arcade there. No arcade anymore. They had Babbage's, Software, etc., KB Toys. Like, that mall was decked out, dude. It was decked out. Not anymore. You got Hot Topic. Hot Topic ain't the same as it used to be. Hot Topic used to seem like you went in there and it was like the gateway to hell. Now it's like Funko Pops and like trendy stuff, friggin' Harry Potter and anime and whatnot. You went in there back then, you're like, dude, better hurry up and get out of here, man. The devil might steal my soul or something. I don't know. But like, all these stores are different now. It's just kind of, the malls are different. It's not the same vibe. But I used to love KB Toys. And KB Toys, I don't remember when they closed down, but even when my kids were a little younger, I like going to KB Toys. But they don't exist anymore. There ain't no toy stores anymore, man. Like, that's a whole other rant and ramble. There are no toy stores. You want to buy a toy? You have a kid. You want to buy a toy? You got to go on Amazon. You got to go. You got to go to Walmart or Target. Like there's no specialty toy stores anymore. It freaking sucks, man. Yeah, I'm a grown ass man, but I like going into like Toys R Us was awesome. Man, now we're going off in a whole other direction here. But yeah, starting to think about that. I want to read some people's replies and comments to this Twitter post. Follow me on Twitter at Madlittlepixel. It's pretty much the only social media I really use. So I want to look at some of the comments here, but it just, I started thinking there wasn't too many consoles that I remember buying other than the PS1 for a specific game. Like the specific game sold me on it. After the PS1, it was like, okay, I got a PS2 the day it came out. Why? Because I loved the PS1. It wasn't for a specific game. And PS3 came out. It wasn't for, it was just because I loved the PlayStation. Got that. And, from the NES to the Super Nintendo, like the NES, it wasn't a specific game either. It was like the culmination, like, wow, this looks way more amazing than my Atari 2600 that I'm playing in my basement in New Jersey. So it was like the NES was like, yeah, I want an NES. And then Super Nintendo, yeah, there was some excellent games, like Mario World would sell it type of thing. But it was more, I think, like I had the previous console, so I want to get the next one. It wasn't a specific game, but the PS1 was definitely a specific game for me. And then another system that kind of, it's a little different, but the Xbox 360, I bought one when it came out. And then like there was this like period of time where there was nothing released for it, or not much of anything. And I was like, I don't want this damn thing. And I sold it to a friend of mine. And when Gears of War came out and I went over his house and I was watching him play it, I was like, I need a freaking Xbox 360. This is freaking amazing. What the hell am I looking at? This is really like the next generation. So Gears of War kind of resold me on it. Like the 360 was like, I bought it just because it was new. And then I didn't really care for it. But then when Gears of War came out, yeah, I have to have a 360. Like, and that's pretty much it. Like, those are the only systems, and the 360 kind of doesn't count. But the PS1, yeah, I bought it for a specific game. Everything else was just kind of like, I want it because it's new or because I bought the previous system type of thing. You know what I mean? Okay, so let's read a few of these comments. There's too many of them to go through every single one. So I'll just kind of pick a few here and there. If I skip you, my bad. But okay, the Game Beaters here. I would imagine that's Dan B over there. I held off for a long time until Metal Gear Solid came out. Nabbed the PS1 and Metal Gear Solid, but later went back for Final Fantasy VII. And that's the thing, like, it's not just about like Final Fantasy VII. That was my experience. But with the PS1, there were so many games, the starts of so many things. Just getting the franchises blown up and out there. Resident Evil, freaking Metal Gear Solid, Tomb Raider, Twisted Metal. Dude, there's so many fighting games for the PS1 as well. Capcom was a big supporter. It was freaking ridiculous, man. The role-playing games out the ass. If you like role-playing games, just out the ass, tons of games, dude. Breath of Fire 3 was one of my all-time favorites. God, I got to go back and replay Breath of Fire 3. Freaking nuts. Brandon, I was PSX from day one with Tekken and Street Fighter Alpha. Yeah, I knew a few people that they were like, man, I was sold because of Tekken. Tekken was a huge one too. Ridge Racer. A lot of the arcade stuff that you were like, holy crap. Senor Pentester had a Nintendo 64, went to a friend's house, played a little game called Command and Conquer Red Alert. I played it on PC, but okay, I was sold immediately. Took my Nintendo 64 to Funkoland and turned it in for a PS1. Oh my God. Trading in your system to get what you wanted. Sometimes we just had to do what we had to do. You know what I mean? Seth Gabriel Brady, same here. Was annoyed about the lack of RPGs for Nintendo 64, especially no Final Fantasy. Right before Final Fantasy VII came out, someone was selling one for super cheap, like $70. Bought it, then Final Fantasy VII a week later. Didn't have a memory card though. What the hell? How can you play without a memory card? Just don't turn it off, man. Don't turn it off. But yeah, Nintendo 64, it was like the PlayStation is what the successor to the Super Nintendo should have been. It could have been, right? The history. Nintendo 64 was excellent. Had one the day it came out. Many, many games I really loved for it. And I'd already said this. If I was like told like some, like freaking godly presence was like, look, mofo, You could pick 2 video game systems, retro, current, doesn't matter, 2. And that's it for the rest of your life, no other games. It would be the PS1 and Super Nintendo for me. Like, it just makes sense. So many games I love for them. Nintendo 64, it was like, just compare it to the Super Nintendo library. Super Nintendo had like what, almost 800 games in the US. Nintendo 64, less than 300. So many companies just dipped out and didn't, make games for them. Just kind of what it was, I guess. Um, John here. I worked at a grocery store and had game rentals. You remember that grocery store's little freaking movies and games you could rent? The manager ordered the PS1 of Final Fantasy VII for me and let me pay 25 a week till it was paid up. That's an awesome boss right there. Holy crap. First game I got along with the system, Christmas of '99, Sarge here. In the end, I was a little disappointed, but there's so many other great games that it didn't matter. And there was, man. Final Fantasy VII wasn't for you. Like, I love the Final Fantasies. Like, seven's not my favorite Final Fantasy. For me, it's 4, 6, which would be 2 and 3 on the Super Nintendo, and then 10 on the PS2, and then 7. I know that may be a controversial opinion. I don't care. We're each our own individual people with our own experiences, but 7 was still amazing, but it was a little off-putting with the graphics. Like, I was used to the older ones where your character looked the same in battle and town. The only spot where they looked different was their portraits. But 7, it was like shifting around cutscene. It was it's a little weird, but it was still excellent. Still excellent. Nanaki Skywalker. In my case, I got a PS1 for Christmas the year before because of Tekken 2. I was not interested in Final Fantasy in the slightest back then. And then the next Christmas, I get Final Fantasy VII from my mom. I waited a few days to play it and got a nice education at RPG 101. Now it's among my favorite games ever. This game wasn't the reason I got a PlayStation, but it was definitely my gateway into JRPGs. And it was a lot for a lot of people. It was, man, one of my favorite games of all time. This is Castor the Gravedigger on my all-time favorite console. My parents got me a PS1 instead of a Saturn. You are Andrew. And I was furious. Sega was it. Then the Ultra 64 demo pics of Locke made me so excited. I knew I was getting Nintendo 64, but still felt bummed to see Final Fantasy leave Nintendo. I lucked out, honestly, getting a PS1 instead of a Saturn. There you go. There you go. So, Rich Retro, I moved to Florida around the time PS1 came out, met my best friend who lived down the street. We got stoned one night, put in Resident Evil, and I was sold. There was some game that sold people on it, man. It's every system that people get sold on. There's going to be a game or two, but it's just the PS1 was just such a crazy time, man. Oh, this is a picture of the PC edition, right? I wanted a PS for this so bad, but the history books will show that I first played 7 on PC. That trapezoid big box had a demo for Thief: The Dark Project, which ended up being one of my favorites. I had Bleem, which is how I played Final Fantasy VIII. Eventually got a PS2. It's Moon Jelly Kevin. But yeah, share your experiences, your thoughts. Just one little discussion here. Love the PS1, one of my favorite systems of all time. So many excellent games. Frickin' Tomba. But yeah, share your thoughts and experiences. I read all the comments. Appreciate you guys. Bye.